So, you want to paint on glass. Let's start with what you need. I personally use the Crawford and Black glass paints that I randomly found in a craft store one day. And there are two reasons I use this over acrylic paint. One is that you can wash it off, so if you make a mistake while you're painting, easily washes off, no problem, and after 24 hours of drying, it is permanent on the glass. And two, it's just for my own peace of mind. I mean, you can use acrylic paints if you prefer. This acts exactly the same as acrylic paints, but I just prefer to use these because I know that they're intended for glass. Now let's talk about paintbrushes. You can really use any paintbrush, round head or flat head. It doesn't matter whatever your design is going for, you'll know which one to use. Just make sure that they're soft. That is what is recommended when you're working with glass. But what I find with painting with a paintbrush is that it gives a much lighter feel and a much lighter texture on the glass. So they can appear streaky sometimes, so just be aware. And if you want a fuller look, you'll have to apply it more thickly with the paint. Not only this, but if you apply in short strokes, you can get a more full look with your paintbrush. I personally don't like using paintbrushes as much because I struggle with the tinier details, because sometimes it can appear streaky and you're just not getting as full of a look. If you do want to know what else I use, I'll go later in the video about the tool I personally like to use when I'm painting on glass, but it can be good for lighter details and less full-on paint, which is why I'm using it for the leaves. Here is a good example of what I mean, that the paint is just going on a bit streaky and a bit blotchy, so just be aware of that when you're painting with the paintbrush. You can go over and you can smooth it out, and once the paint is dry you can go over it again, so it's not that big a deal, but it depends what sort of look you want. Normally I will go for a fuller look, so I want it to be darker, but I'm just showing you as an example what sort of effect you can do. Here's an example of me using both the paintbrush and my other tool in the same work. You can see here that the paintbrush is more streaky and on top it is more full with the other tool I use. The other tool I use is a scoring/engraving tool, which is actually supposed to be used for paperwork, but I just found that it was the best tool to use when painting on glass, and the simple reason is because it picks up the paint more fully and covers it more full basically, and I really enjoy it because it gets the finer details and does everything I really want. Now you do have to be patient with this because, as you can see here, very tiny details, but it also brings the texture that I want. So when I do fur texture or feather texture, it really creates that sort of texture using this tool. Because of the metal end, it makes it so that it isn't applied streakily onto the glass and works with the glass, because they're both not absorbent, they just sort of smear across it, if that makes any sense. It makes sense in my head. Along with this, it has two ends, so one has a bigger end and one has a smaller end, which is great because if I want to get more finer details, I'll use the smaller end. But if I want to fill in more space, I'll use the bigger end. And with these scoring tools and engraving tools, you can get many of different sizes. But honestly, you could probably use a knitting needle as well. I just personally use this because I know it works. So you can really go ahead and try other techniques and other tools as well. So now onto techniques, and there's so many different techniques that you can use when you're painting on glass, as you've already got the tools that you want and probably what sort of approach you're going to take to it. So whether you want shorter strokes for fuller effect, or if you want lighter effect, you'll take longer strokes. Now, normally I would say start with the base colour, which is what I've done with the Kingfisher one I did and with the bee one. I started with black and I started with blue with one and the other. But for this particular design, I didn't actually start with the base colour. I went in with the darker colour and started shaping the face. Which, if you know what I'm doing during the process, if you know what animal I'm making during the process, I'd love for you to guess. But anyway, on this one in particular, I'm doing sort of like the darker shape that I had on the side of its face, just so that I can get the shape right. Because if you start with a base colour, you can go over in detail. And that's what I will be doing later, but I just wanted to get the shape in first, because if I didn't want to go in detail in the end, because I want to keep these designs sort of basic, sort of cartoon-like, but still have a sense of realism, then I sort of go in with more of the shape as a priority. So I will do outlines with the colours that I need. And it is great when I use the scoring tool, because I really only have to just wipe it down because it's metal and doesn't soak up. So I just wipe it down, get the other colour, and just start on the next process. So as you can see here, I'm doing the ears now, and I'm basically working my way around the shape of the face, and then we'll be adding details when I see it necessary. But normally you would start with the base and then you would layer on top. So for the kingfisher, I started with the darker blue, and then it has little lighter blues poking out of its feathers, and then I added that on top of it. I mean, this guy looks really grumpy in this shot, but I swear that was just his face on the reference photo that I was copying it from. Now, as you can see here, the technique is really working because it's really making it look fluffy, and that's exactly what I want for this particular animal, because they are a fluffy animal. And I'm starting to go over with the white, and something about when you do lighter colours on glass, at least for me, you will have to go over it twice if you want that fuller look, just because it sometimes dries a little bit funny and sometimes can look a bit blotchy. But it's not overly bad, it's not overly noticeable, but I just like to go over it twice just to make sure that everything is full and has a bit more coverage on it. So here you can see me carrying on the technique of getting the shape round with each colour that I use. Because this is quite a colourful character, he has loads of different colours, so I keep switching between them all, just on this particular piece. But if you're using maybe more basic colours, like one predominant colour during it, then that's probably the best one to go for. I just use the darker ones because there's so much layering in between, so the darker parts at the end, we're going to have the more orange and lighter parts going over it slightly, so I thought that would be the best place to start. But honestly, go with how you feel and what you think will be best, because there's no right and there's no wrong way to do it. But I also forgot to mention earlier that out of all of the colours, the black in this set applies the best for me. I just feel like it covers most of it, so you can't really see any blotchy thing, anything like that. It is the most smooth to apply and is the best, and you will see me applying more of it later, but obviously I've just added it now for like the nose, the mouth and the ears and the eyes. Not right now, you won't see it in the ears yet, but later you will. And later he has a black belly and paws and all that. If you've guessed it already, it's a red panda is what I'm doing here. I just saw a photo of it and I just thought, you know what, I'll just paint that on a jar, why not? So yeah. For the body, I mainly focused on just getting the outline in with the colours that it is predominant in, because there was so much to fill, and because it was mainly just one colour of the body and just getting the shape in to show more of what it was, like you can see the shape of the paws at the bottom, that I just thought if I do the outline first, at least I know where I'm working. Whereas with the face, I was a bit more free and I was just going with what I could do in the shape when I applied the colour. But for the body in particular, I just wanted to get the outline in first and then fill it in, because it had one predominant colour throughout, basically. As you can see here, I'm just applying it with more thick and fuller strokes than I did on the face. So the face was more short strokes and the body's more full and long strokes, just because it's obviously a bigger space to fill and the body is obviously bigger anyway, so there was just more to work with and do longer strokes with. And here is the finished piece. I hope this video helped in any way and that it was useful to you. I know this is personally what I've learned doing this and experimenting with this, but you might find a better technique or a better way to do it. But I hope I helped in some form, and thank you for watching the video.